This is day 4 of the April 94 7-day retreat in Springwater. And it's cold. It's supposed to be snow and ice later. I can feel it. Someone put a note on the little table here. Could I talk some more about that which does not move? Perhaps its relationship to change. I did some of it yesterday. A lot of people asked me about it. But it is not a thought or a word, and therefore can't really be talked about. I did say a few things, and that's about all I can say. But we can look we can look together at that which moves. Thoughts, emotions, fear, desire, depression, elation. That we can look at and talk about, because that's palpably here and has all to do with thought and words and ideas and images. And if we can, for moments at a time, look at it without moving reactively against it or clinging to it or afraid to see it, then maybe something is there in the looking at that which moves without movement of reaction. Also, before starting the talk, I want to clarify something. Somebody asked me, are we to believe, I don't remember it at all verbatim, I only get the gist of it in my memory. Are we to believe that you are in this state all the time of no movement or no ego? And how did you do it? And I hastened to say, I'm not. Obviously, I get involved in attention. I fall asleep like everyone else. And I wondered whether it could be traced back to a part in the talk where I said, as we were talking about resistance and the effort to break through resistance, it occurred that the whole of ego is a resistance. It felt like a good way of describing it. And then I said, I'm throwing it out, meaning not I have thrown it out, I have no longer ego, but here it is for discussion, for looking at, for examining it. That's what throwing out meant at that point. I already had a notion, I may have said it, put it in a dangerous way. I think I corrected it a little bit right at the time, but I don't remember anymore. This whole network of self-centeredness is so deeply programmed into human beings' body minds since time immemorial, coming with that huge brain which is able to store, remember, project, symbolize, act from idea. how can one get rid of it or throw it out? And yet it can be seen in awareness, in looking, in listening, talking with each other, and again looking alone at what has been talked about, wondering about it, and observing oneself in action, in reaction rather, because we are reacting most of the time. Rarely do we act out of clarity. We react from our memory, from our past. And that is open to observation. Amazingly enough, a human being can wake up to what he or she just said or did, or is in the process of doing, or almost about to say. It's possible to become aware of that, which is a marvelous thing, unexplainable. And in such awareness there is learning, and there is a growing wisdom about the ways of self-centeredness or ego, the ways of memory and image. A growing wisdom about it, which operates at a moment of insight. To see, I'm about to do this again, or I'm just doing this, or this is happening. And maybe end the line of thinking or the pattern of behavior at a moment of insight or awareness. Even though the consequences of the thoughts that were thought, or the ideas that went through the mind, the behaviors resulting from the ideas, the results of that may still reverberate in the body for quite a while. And to be aware of that without interference with it. Maybe that can be called a going beyond the patterned way of living. Awareness of it, and in the awareness maybe a ceasing or abating of the habitual patterns. It's for each one of us to grapple with, to find out, to wonder about, to sit with or walk with, live with, and observe. No one can do it for someone else, but we can talk together. Listen to each other, point things out to each other. And if we're lucky, we won't resist it. We will listen and look openly, even though it may hurt. So I know of no such movement as throwing out or getting rid of ego. But most certainly there is awakening to it and awareness of it as it operates. And in that awareness, a possibility of being beyond it, because that awareness is motionless, without reactiveness, without fear or desire. It just reveals in all simplicity what is happening. Maybe in this connection, a few words about many people yesterday reporting that it was their hardest day. Difficult, sleepy, oppressive, depressive. Sometimes it helps to realize one isn't the only one, because that helps to deepen the depression or add to the weight. But also, can one go through these states, these changing states of body-mind, without taking them so seriously, without believing that they will last forever, that they are me, Well, they are me in a small sense, but there's not what I am. I'm not my depressive or elated states. These are passing things, all in one way or another connected with memory, comparison, all these mental functions that human beings have developed over the millennia, comparing ourselves to others and coming out superior and inferior. And from those ideas, energies released in the body, either elating energies or depressive energies. I don't think animals do that. I don't think that they think of themselves, of each other comparatively. If they fight for females, they fight it out. And the one who is weaker withdraws, sometimes gets killed. But is this now carried symbolically in the mind of the victor? I don't know. It's generally said that a brain has to have a certain size to be able to do this kind of storing and symbolizing, remembering on and on and on. So, going through depression, despair, or boredom, can one go lightly with these states? Let them be and not believe that they are there forever, because this is how it appears at the moment. We get so fooled by our states of body-mind. Temporary phenomena based on temporary ways of thinking, which is always changing. Thinking is always changing. Memory brings new things up. New ideas may put an end to the depression. Another idea may bring it back. Or maybe a moment of just simple, selfless listening. Open listening, we also call it. Not constantly thinking about oneself. How am I doing? How do I feel? Am I doing as well as others, or worse, or better? There's an addictive quality to those thoughts and the feelings that they arouse. And that's interesting to observe. Instead of suffering from the depression, make it a research project. What is going on? And then there'll be some energy to observe it. How it was evoked or precipitated may have, the attention wasn't there to see the thoughts that started it. Maybe it was there. But how is it maintained? Because no mood can maintain itself without the fuel of more thought and imagery about oneself, or the world, or the others, or my relationships. And that fueling thought process is observable. It can become transparent to the mind that's interested in finding out about itself. Not just trying to feel better or find happiness, but to find the truth about oneself. From moment to moment. And it's amazing how quickly a depressive state can lift like the fog when it isn't given credence and whatever maintains it is brought to light. There's no mention here of fighting it, trying to get rid of it, but bring the light of understanding to it. So it's possible to watch, to see connection between thought and mood or emotion. And to see the speed of the connection. Somebody brought it up in a meeting. It goes so fast. The emotion there, and hardly has one noticed the thought. But then where is our emphasis? Often our emphasis is, I missed it again. I didn't see it. I didn't prevent it. She mentioned something where she saw something. I can't do it. And more emotion and mood. But it's a marvelous thing to notice at all that there is a connection between the way we think and the way we feel. And how quick it goes. Where in that is the space for an ego that does that? It's just a happening of connections in this network of thinking and emoting that has developed not just over our lifetime, because we are inheriting in one way or another the connections and networks of our parents and their parents and their parents. All of humanity's established connections between thinking and emoting result here in us. And then we blame ourselves for it, or others for it, rather than seeing how it operates. It's a very important learning. Doesn't need to rationalize it, doesn't need to excuse it, doesn't need to blame oneself for it or praise oneself for it. Where is the self? It's just memory. It's just idea. And emotions, which are so real, so hurtful, so painful, or so pleasurable. That we take the reality of the body's manifestations for the reality of a me. Which we try to protect and defend and enhance or get rid of. It's all happening in thought, in image. Do we see that? Even the body is not a constant, changeless reality. It changes all the time. I can never tire of reading these fascinating reports, how quickly even the organs like a liver or heart, the cells, the muscles, how quickly it all renews itself. The old cells dying, new ones being formed all the time. So that I think in the course of 7 years or less, there's not a bit left of what's here now. And in sitting without clutching or wanting something or fearing something, just being there with what is observed. At times there's a feeling as though there was no body at all. It's just a bunch of energy, which is what it is. Physicists tell us that. Because the cell is the molecules, is the atoms, is the nucleus. Lots of space, lots of energy. Very little substance. And what is that substance? Nothing solid and changeless either. So we're a little excretion of big space, little space in big space. And not to make an idea of it, a new image. A new space platform we talked about today. One has a new image and there we're floating with it. something to hold on to, what I am. Because I'm so afraid I could find out that I'm nothing at all. Nothing solid, nothing permanent, nothing predictable. Which is what we are. Not permanent, not predictable, perishable. Perishable goods. Keep cold. I wanted to talk about fear today, actually. This was the topic of the day, because it has come up a lot. People mentioning that in sitting and maybe things straightening out a little bit, the problems aren't there. It's a little quiet, a little space. And then fear. Do I want to go on with this? What will come of it? What will I discover? That's one fear. What will happen to me if I just sit quietly and know nothing? Will I lose myself? Will I lose what I am? Or what we should say, what I think I am. Will I lose it? Will it get lost? Will I disappear? There's one set of fears. Of course, there are as many fears as there are objects to be afraid of, or situations to remember or anticipate to be afraid of. And it is very worth our while to see how remembered or anticipated conditions cause the body to palpitate with what we call fear. A little bit different maybe for each person. For one person, a little bit more of the heart. For another person, more of the intestines or the head, or all of it together, the muscles tensing. Maybe a lot of energy to run away. These are all of our ingrained, ancient, already inherited from our animal existence, responses to survive danger. Only I don't think animals sit and graze and then remember something and start running. They run when they see a movement around them, something real. Although it can be mistaken. A person here, a retreatant walking, will not shoot a deer, but the deer runs. Although they've become a little bit tamer. Maybe we just think they do, but it appears that way. But do observe with, at least I do with interest, how one thought of something frightening from the past can set the whole fear complex in motion in a human being, like you and me. One thought. If the thought hadn't been seen, then one says, I don't know why I'm so afraid. But I am. And then this state of fear that the body manifests so faithfully because it has been triggered by a thought or remembrance or an anticipation, that state itself says to the brain, there's danger around here because of the way I feel. It's not quite verbatim like this, but a state of anxiety seems so truthful. There must be something dangerous, or else I wouldn't feel this way, is the line of thinking, or vague thinking, may not be very clearly expressed. So to be very intimate with the power of thought, to put this whole organism into a state of fear, or anger, or depression, we talked about earlier. It's amazing, the power of one thought, one memory, one image. people will say, well, knowing that doesn't help me. It still happens. It does. It does happen very quickly. The connections are very well lubricated. Although it does happen at times, it is possible. And when I say these things, I'm not saying them because I read them, but these things are observed here myself. Most of the time when I talk from what I've experienced myself or what people have told me, but not what they have read, but what they have experienced themselves. And when it seems very plausible, I have experienced similar things, I use what people tell me to put it out there for everyone to look, because we're so much alike in all of these things. So, not to expect that one insight or one moment of awareness will change this whole pattern. It doesn't. It's so strong, so deep. And yet, this possibility of seeing a fearful thought arise and, as it were, saying no to it. I'm not going to think this. One has gone over it 1,000,000 times. One understands the consequences. And when there's really awareness, the energy and wisdom of that can end it right then and there if the whole thing hasn't already been set in motion. That is possible. But it needs the energy of attention. And by energy, I don't mean brimful of it, but attention. With its inbuilt wisdom. So all of us want to be rid of fear, of course, because it's very unpleasant. It's a very unpleasant state, fear and anxiety. We don't want it. We want to be free of it. And we seek ways, remedies, practices, not to suffer so much from it, to ameliorate it. And there are practices to maybe focus the attention on the breathing, remain with that, and well, it's very clear with that the thought process has been interrupted. If the attention is really focused on the breathing, there's a calming setting in. Or doing simple tasks. One person said, I love to, I may not reproduce it properly, organize my day A, B, C, D, E, and follow it, and all is well. Which reminded me of having read someplace that a woman who was greatly disturbed mentally, very disturbed brain waves, was given simple tasks of adding figures. And while doing these simple tasks of adding figures, her brain waves normalized, calmed down. So these possibilities are open to us, to watch the breathing or count the breathing, and maybe a noticeable calming down of the mind and body, which are one process. But fear will come again, fear will arise again. And we were talking about it a little bit yesterday in one group meeting, that radically, fundamentally speaking, as long as there is attachment to me as an idea, to this body, also as an idea that I want to last and continue forever, stay young forever, healthy forever, attachment to my children, my husband, my family. Attachment, you name it. As long as there's attachment, there inevitably is the fear of losing what we're attached to. You have one, you have the other. You can't have attachment without fear. I think it's impossible. It wouldn't be attachment. There was no fear of losing it. With attachment, the fear is basically there, in the background or in the foreground. So we're demanding the impossible, are we? To be free of fear, but to continue with our attachments? Or do we realize that with the one we have to deal with the other? Or is there a possibility of seeing clearly, beyond any shadow of doubt, that we are not all these things that we're attached to, that these are just temporary phenomena? Attachment to our body, this image of ourselves as me, getting better, getting whatever all we imagine for ourselves, becoming something, being something. That's all temporary stuff of the imagination. Our attachment to our children, husband, wife. How enduring are our relationships? Even if they're enduring, one of us, both of us will die. Inevitable. We may be left by our spouse. Our children grow up and leave. It is a fact. It is a fact of life. Coming into being and growing, aging and dying. And we want to have it differently, or we don't want to think it through. We want to live with our imagined conditions, people, things, and don't want the fear and the uncertainty that comes with it. You could say, or one could say, well, can I be with someone without attachment? Is it possible not to be attached to this body, this idea of myself? Things and relationships and situations and ideas. Is it possible for a human being not to be attached to all of that? Not to be identified with all of that? Is that a good question to keep there? Not I must be unattached, or I must break my attachments, or it's impossible, it's human nature. Not any of these musts or rationalizations, but an open question. Is it possible to be alive and from moment to moment see through attachment, because we are attached from habit, but to see through it, to see right through it? Make it transparent, or let it become transparent. And the transitoriness of it. So that it's possible to be there, but without fear. Because it's clear it won't last forever. And I'm not being or meaning to be melodramatic. Because one could get very cynical about the whole thing. But I don't talk about being cynical or become indifferent or isolated. No, to be there, to be here fully, and yet see the transitoriness of our body, see what this feeling of me is all made up of. Mostly memory and anticipation. See the impermanence of our relationships. And with that, maybe the attachment becoming also transparent, perforated, permeated with awareness. And one will notice that in such states of clarity, there is very little fear, maybe none. Because there's nothing to be afraid of or for. Because at the same time, there's realization that the whole of aliveness palpitates right here. It's not separate from one, the rain or trees, peepers or clouds. It's all here, inseparable. As one whole movement, seen without the movement of attachment. Or without the movement of fear, wanting to hold it, it can't be held. Wanting to get rid of it, it can't be gotten rid of. So what is one to do? It's an amazing thing that being transparently awake this moment, transparent of attachment and longings, is also a freedom of them. And freedom to be here fully, gracefully. A little while ago, before breakfast, I looked on the deck through the window, and it was washed sparklingly clean. We will end here for today.